The first thing that I ask everyone is to give a little background about themselves. Maybe you want to start talking about some work or studies or hobbies.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, for me, for those who don't know me, I'm an iOS developer currently working at CVS Health, which in the US is just a big pharmacy. They're into a lot of different industries. And so I've been with them for 6 months, and that was kind of the culmination of a big career change of mine that I went through. So I was working in kind of the tech scene, but doing business development type stuff for a startup in Chicago. And that was a really good experience. It was kind of my first experience in kind of a tech software startup and was a lot of fun. But for me, I struggled to kind of see the long term trajectory in terms of career growth and what that looked like in the business side of it. It seemed a little bit less tangible to me. And so that led me to look into the field of software development, which was something that had interested me for years up until that point. I had just never really done anything at all with it, never really spent the time to learn it. And so decided, it was a good time where I felt like I was kind of stagnating in my current role to just keep an open mind and check out some other industries. And so, like I said, software was the first place that I turned to, and pretty early on isolated iOS as the area that I wanted to go deeper into, and the area that for me at least seemed most approachable and most familiar as like a longtime Apple user and things like that. And so really just took it one step at a time, consuming online resources, and slowly went down the path to the point where I felt optimistic enough to quit the job that I had and kind of go full time to try and turn this into a career. And so for me, that looked like enrolling in a 3-month immersive iOS bootcamp here in the States in Utah. And that was started as an in-person program, but was only in person for a couple weeks before the pandemic hit. And then it kind of turned remote. But yeah, that was a great program where, I really accelerated my learning and understanding. You can only get so far doing several hours a week, on nights and weekends if you're working a full-time job. So that was incredible for me to kind of spend all my time every day learning iOS development, and really enjoyed that program, which then kind of led to a lengthy job hunt process for me. But like I said, eventually landed at CVS, where I'm currently working at now. And so, for me, that's kind of my primary thing right now, but I'm definitely very intrigued and kind of like to immerse myself with what's going on in the indie space, and don't have any kind of current projects that I'm putting a ton of time into, but one day would definitely like to launch a bigger indie app and kind of be more involved in that community.
That's really amazing, man. You're actually the second iOS developer that I interviewed that has come from a completely different background. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting that a lot of people are deciding to go into software development straight into mobile, straight directly into iOS.
Yeah.
Yeah, really curious about why that might be. I mean, your reason is that you were a heavy Apple user, right? So that
Yeah.
was what you were most familiar with. I think most people in the
Yeah.
US are also the most familiar with Apple. So maybe there's something there.
Yeah, the States, I think it's close to 50-50 Apple, Android, but for me, like I said, I tried out some basic web development, but for whatever reason, found it to be not quite as approachable in terms of, the different programs and all the different things that go into like making something run. And so for me, I think I just kind of got the immediate validation from the Apple side of things in terms of, if you have Xcode running on your Mac, it's pretty, easy and quick to at least just get a basic, interactions running on a physical device. And so that is a really, cool experience to get pretty early on that I think was really important for me in order to keep, going down the path where for whatever reason, I could be, could have just been overestimating. But for me, it felt like there was a lot more that goes into turning your code into something that, getting feedback and having it do something that you want. Whereas Apple, I think, does a lot to make that as easy as possible. There's a few hurdles that you have to get through, but that was something that was cool because, we've been using these devices for years and years, and to kind of understand what goes into getting an app on your phone and, learning about the Swift language that these apps are leveraging was really cool to kind of see the back end of it. And then again, for me, it's just kind of, going one step at a time of layering on different abilities to kind of make your app do more and more. And that's kind of what I still am looking to do today. There's an endless amount that you can learn with kind of the iOS side, and it can be overwhelming at times, but I always like to kind of pick and choose which areas are most interesting to me and kind of, get something working with some of the new stuff as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think iOS development has uh, the easiest learning curve when it comes to software development, because I also have tried some web development, and I mean, you have to learn at least three basic things, like HTML, you have JavaScript, and
Hmm.
CSS, which is a mess. CSS is completely, at least for me, is very complex and hard to understand. So yeah, I agree. I think
Yeah.
iOS development has the easiest learning curve of them all. And I also saw that you have a very nice YouTube channel where you actually explain how your journey came into existence for being an iOS developer.
Yeah.
When did you started that YouTube channel? Was it at the same time when you started developing apps?
Yeah. So it was a little bit later on. So my first video, I think, was actually like the last day of 2020. So it's been about 6 months, I guess, or not quite. But yeah, for me, the motivation there was, I felt like I had gone through, such a long process to get to the point of, as a person with no prior computer science or software development experience to end up getting that first role. It's a very difficult, long, tough process. And for me, on the early side of it, I was just very hungry for information and content and guidance from people who had gone before me, who were in the industry, and was, again, really just hungry to hear from them of, hey, what are the things that you can do to get here? What are the things that you can do to separate yourself? And not in the sense of, I have all the answers or a surefire way to help, anybody land a job. There's, of course, tons and tons of factors, but having, gone through a 6 month really intensive job search, having applied to hundreds and hundreds of jobs, having built out a portfolio, I felt like I had some valuable things that I could at least just share, maybe some of my own experiences, some of the things that I had learned along the way, with the hopes of, helping somebody like myself a year ago or so looking to transition into it, somebody who maybe is feeling overwhelmed by, how do I get here? What are some of the steps? What are some of the things that I need to do? So that was the primary motivation, is really just, I felt like I had obtained a lot of, tactics and things that I could just share to help somebody better navigate the path to becoming an iOS developer and things like that. And so yeah, that's been a fun thing for me. I've learned a lot through the process, just in terms of how to put together videos, things like that, and really enjoy kind of the interaction that you get from people very similar to myself just earlier on, reaching out and saying, oh, this was really valuable for me, or I've been able to change this part about, my portfolio or my resume or my LinkedIn page or my GitHub, and working through this. And so, yeah, that's been kind of the motivation. It's maybe 50% like tactics and job search strategies, and then the other 50% is just kind of a mix of different iOS or Apple related things. So, videos about new things in the industry, or maybe experiences that I've had or apps that I've worked on, things like that. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Definitely have gotten more feedback than I had expected, which is always great, and have a lot in store to kind of continue to share and continue to put out content.
That's great. That's awesome. A lot of us are on the early stages of becoming a full-time indie hacker.
Yeah.
You're giving out really good tips, really great resources on like resume building, and I think it's very valuable. Everyone should check that out. The next thing is about sources of inspiration. I think you have three apps, right, on the App Store.
Yeah.
Maybe what was your
Yeah, that's right.
your source? Do you have specific communities that you are part of?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's just exactly that. For me, like you said, I have three apps on the App Store, and really the singular goal of those applications was to build a portfolio and to essentially build my credibility as a candidate applying for entry level iOS developer roles. Makes a lot of sense if an employer sees that you have experience launching apps on the app platform and maintaining apps and building out features, that that's something that directly translates to what you would be doing as an employee of that company. And so that's it's probably the number one thing that I would recommend for new iOS developers who are trying to break in, is that at least have one app on the App Store. So again, that was kind of my singular goal with those apps, was to use it as a tool to get a job, not necessarily to acquire a big user base or drive revenue as like the more indie type of applications. But in terms of the ideas, just like you said, it's I think especially starting out, if you're on that path where it is more of a resume builder, a lot of people say work on things that are relevant to your own life, maybe that you're interested in, or a problem that you are experiencing. And so I definitely try to incorporate that in all three applications, of just things that I'm interested in or things that are relevant to me. What that does is it gives you that added motivation when you're maybe at a stopping point to keep pushing to get it over the finish line, versus maybe something that you're not interested in. But for me, I'm full of ideas. I have just an ideas section in my Notion, where if I'm out of the house or wherever, if an idea pops into my head, I'll just throw it down and can come back to it later and kind of flesh it out more. So I definitely think it's great to kind of make sure that you have that, because it is very easy to forget if you don't write it down. You may think that it'll stick with you, but in my experience, you forget it very quickly. And so, I think the other important thing is to be realistic in terms of how the feasibility, I guess, of the idea, because for me, it was like, I don't have 6 months to build out one application. I need something that takes less time, because I need to build my portfolio now. And so I think thinking small is helpful, again, just in terms of getting something across the finish line. I think it's much better to spend maybe 30 days working on a smaller application that does less things than spending 3 to 6 months on one application and then having nothing on your resume for that time. Because the great thing too is that you can always come back and add in more features. You can always build out more things to it. But it's really important to kind of select an idea that is feasible. I think you may have an idea for like whatever that's really big or really involved and has a lot of different moving parts, but that's not gonna it's gonna take you very long to get there. Whereas thinking small, thinking of like one small problem that your app can solve for, and that it, and then leave it there, is gonna, again, just help you get things across the finish line versus starting a bunch of projects and never finishing any of them. So yeah, I don't think there's any, it's kind of like the creativity discussion of, it's comes from a lot of different places, and there's not necessarily one process, but I think pulling ideas from your own daily life, maybe problems that you experience or interests that you have, is a great place to start. So for me, one of the apps that I've worked on, it's called Haptic Haven, and it's essentially an app specifically for iOS developers to allow them to test and compare different types of haptic feedback or different types of vibrations that they can implement into their own applications. And so that whole idea originated because when I was developing my first application, it was a really involved and tough process for me to figure out which types of vibrations to put into that application, in terms of running it on a simulator, running it on your phone, and then having to redo code to run another type of vibration. And it was just it took me a lot longer, I guess, than I thought it would to figure that type of stuff out. And so, I wrote that idea down to come back to it later. And then later on that turned into a fun application that I was able to release again called Haptic Haven, because it originated from a problem that I had. And so again, just always be writing ideas down. I think, even if you don't think they're good ideas, and then you can always just go to that idea bank and select maybe which one makes sense to pursue at any given time.
Yeah, it's very good advice. And also building small apps, as you mentioned, it gives you that motivation to keep building because you're actually finishing up your projects instead of building, as you said, really big ones and dropping out at the middle of the development, which I actually have done a lot. So yeah, we should all
Yeah,
start
I think
doing.
we all have. That's definitely a common thing that we all have to fight against is, again, getting that last 25% or that last 50% is always a lot less fun than the initial phase of, starting a brand new project. I think we all maybe get a little bit too excited sometimes and have to rein that in. So I don't think you're alone there.
For sure. And your haptic feedback app called Heaven, I actually downloaded it and it's pretty good. It looks really nice. I love the neomorphic design, and I think I'm gonna be using it for all my next projects because it's actually a real issue in iOS development. You have to look for the code on like Stack Overflow or someplace else to get
Yeah.
the right feedback and impact and all that. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I saw that you added
Yeah. Thank you.
like a tip jar. What is that like in-app purchase or?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, I had mentioned early on the like primary goal with all the apps that I have was just to build out my portfolio and to get my first job. And as soon as I, got my first job that I have now, the kind of my interaction with those has totally shifted to become more of just like a playground or a learning ground for me to try out new things in my application, maybe try out new trends or new things that Apple is releasing, and then actually implementing it into a live, production application. And so that's, an example of one thing that I've done since, maybe the initial launch. Another example is like alternate app icons, because that's kind of a big trend, or things like dark mode, things like that. But yeah, in terms of the in-app purchases through the tip jar, that was kind of my effort into learning and kind of grasping the whole in-app purchase ecosystem. So, the primary goal was definitely not to generate any sort of meaningful revenue. That's, not no tip jar, I don't think really accomplishes that. But, what it does is now, having gone through that process to the point where I've released it into a live production app, it's kind of like building out a foundation of skills that would be needed and necessary to know for maybe a future project that is more of the traditional type of indie application that has a lot of features that users might be willing to pay for, whether it's through a subscription or a one-time purchase. And so that was, again, my kind of, I guess, a building block for me to have that foundation to later on potentially release a bigger application. And now I kind of have that understanding of that whole side of the in-app purchases that I wouldn't have if I didn't go through that process. So like I said, I really just use them as a learning ground to try out new things, new ideas. It's just a lot of fun because there's really no pressure for me to kind of constantly be releasing new features or things like that. It's kind of whenever I see something that is interesting enough to me, I have a place where I can now actually launch it in live code and tweak it and things like that. So yeah, it's a lot of fun to kind of have that as a playground for me.
That's very smart. Yeah, I hadn't seen it that way. And especially in-app purchases can get very complex very quickly. So it's good that you already implemented something like that.
It's kind of just a third-party package called Swifty, like Swifty in-app purchases or something like that, where it has like 5,000 stars on GitHub and is super well maintained and essentially just makes the whole process a lot easier. Very similar to what Revenue Cat does, but yeah, it is kind of a pain using Apple's native in-app purchases. And the thing is you don't have to always leverage that. You can use some of these services that just make it a lot easier. And for me, that just made sense to kind of get something up and running. And you still do learn a lot through what you have to do in like App Store Connect and on the back end to facilitate that. But it just kind of, cuts out a lot of the trouble that you would go through otherwise.
Yeah, it allows you to move forward more quickly, definitely.
Yeah, 100%.
So about your YouTube channel, what are your long-term goals for it? What are you expecting to grow or yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is something that I'm, really trying to iron out right now. I think for me, the initial goal was kind of just to test the waters and see if, what the process actually looks like to create multiple videos, how long it takes, learning the editing, learning the different things that go into it, and seeing how I like it. And so I kind of feel like I'm, I think I'm 16 or 17 videos in. I feel like I'm coming over that first stage where it was truly just a question of, what is this going to be like and how do I enjoy it? And then I can decide, is it actually worth the time commitment and the effort, on top of a full-time job and things like that. So all thumbs up there. I've, enjoyed it and been able to learn a lot. Still have a lot to learn, in terms of video production and quality and things like that. But yeah, I guess now that I'm through that initial hump, I'm just trying to nail down, what direction I want to take it, and things like that. It's nice that I don't, have to put out one video a week or anything like that. Nobody's counting on me for that. So it really is something where I can, give into it however much effort that I want to. But, I really enjoy it. I love putting a video together that, again, is either very tactical tips for somebody or even, another area is just more of like an entertainment style video. And so, yeah, I mean, I want to keep maybe putting out, I think a sweet spot for me is maybe 3 videos a month. And again, a mix between, maybe job searching tactics or industry news, indie tips, things like that. But I guess I don't really have any like written down growth goals in terms of views or subscribers. I tend to focus more on like the inputs of number of videos, of quality of videos, and then whatever kind of results in terms of subscribers or views is good with me. And so, I would love to see it grow, but I if whatever comes out of it is okay with me.
I like that. Yeah, I'm doing exactly the same with this project, trying to put out a video every week and just seeing where this goes. Finally, I always ask creators to name another person that they would love to collaborate with, maybe another character from Twitter. Maybe you know someone from YouTube, even. I don't know. Do you have someone that you would like to work with?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty, active in both the Twitter community for iOS and YouTube. So a lot of the people who are either creating content or who are sharing, their experiences as maybe an indie developer or things like that. A lot of them I, communicate with, and it's really cool because for the most part, people who are active in the community are really willing to help other people and offer advice, and I think that's a really cool thing, and it's just valuable for anybody who's in the community to learn from other people and to share advice. So yeah, I mean, some people like that I look up to. There's a guy named James Haville on Twitter. He makes a bunch of cool indie apps and some cool YouTube videos sharing his experience as like an indie developer specifically, which I think there's not a lot of content on YouTube out there geared towards that. So I think what he's doing is really cool. Most recently, there's a guy named Jordan Morgan who just, he was an indie developer and then had an app. Somebody acquired his finance application, and so he is really experienced in the indie world and up to date with kind of user experience in the Apple ecosystem. And so he just a couple days ago released a book, kind of compiling a bunch of his experiences as an indie developer and very tactical tips with things. The name of it, it's like world class
Oh, best in
applications
class
yeah,
iOS. Yeah, yeah,
exactly,
yeah. I
best in
saw that.
class. And so yeah, what he's doing is super cool because he's kind of talking about all the different facets of creating a best in class application. So starting with accessibility, making sure that the app is usable and accessible to all sorts of people, to the very nitty gritty of just interacting with a button or navigation, and just has an extreme eye for detail and making tons of little small improvements that each of them on their own may not be very significant, but when you add up a lot of small things, it creates something really, really special. So I, love what he's doing, and have interacted with him and a lot of people who are doing similar things. Again, just to kind of learn from, encourage, and share, shared advice and things like that. So yeah, those are two that come to mind most recently. But like I said, there's a ton of great, helpful people who are doing awesome things and kind of sharing their experience. So I definitely encourage people to, whatever industry that they're in, try and seek that out. Twitter just happens to be a great space for iOS people who are sharing what they're doing. But depending on your industry, there's all sorts of places that you can plug into to seek help and seek encouragement or advice. But then also, hopefully, you're helping others out too, and you're offering some sort of value back into that community as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree. The iOS community is especially unique. Did you have the chance to join the iOS Dev Happy Hour last week?
Yeah, so I wasn't able to this most recent one, but I have been to several before, and always try and make it if I can. But yeah, it's another area that is just awesome, where people get together from all different paths, from only a couple months into learning iOS development to over 10 years. And, people are there just to meet other people, get to be involved and active in the community. So I love what they're doing there, and definitely always try and make it out. Have you been to any of those?
Yeah, the first time I went was the last
Okay.
Saturday, I
Yeah.
think. Yeah, it was really
Yeah, that's
good.
awesome.
Very valuable content and amazing people in there. I
Oh
love
yeah,
that they
definitely.
do a small break rooms. So there, it's not always like 1,000 people on the Zoom call. It's just like 8 people that you can hang out with and talk about what you expect
Yeah,
from
totally.
and
I
everything.
right. I think that's everybody's, favorite part is the breakout rooms. Just again, learn, meeting people from all different walks of life and all different experience levels with their own applications, or people working for Apple, or people working for these different cool companies. It's a great place to just kind of meet people and not really even have an agenda in terms of what you're talking about, or things like that. But especially throughout COVID, where none of that was happening in person, it became a really cool place for that to happen virtually, and meet people from all over the world too, different countries like we're doing right now. Is just such a cool thing. And so yeah, shout out to Alan and kind of the people that have helped him build that up. It's been a great thing.
For sure. Really great content, really great place to meet other developers. Yeah, oh, last thing, would you like to give any advice, any suggestion or quote that you like?
Yeah, I guess closing quote. There's a guy I love to listen to. His name's Sean Cannell, and I just heard a quote that he shared. It was actually from Michael Dell, so the founder of Dell Computers, and his quote is that ideas are a commodity, but the execution of them is not. And so, essentially saying that there's billions of ideas, but the actual implementation of them is actually a lot more valuable, maybe in a lot of cases, than the actual idea. And so, I think it's awesome that the world we live in today is that if you're lucky enough to have a Mac computer, then really the only thing that's standing in the way between you turning an idea that you have into a real life functioning application that anyone can download is just your own hard work and time and effort to go into that. So yeah, I think any idea that you have is valid and is worth you kind of
Pursuing it.
focusing on to
Yeah.
turn it into a real life product. And the cool thing is that you never know. You might think that you're the only one that has a certain problem or something, but just releasing it out into the open where anybody can interact or benefit from it, you never know what type of reception you're going to get. And so I think it's great, like I said, to be involved in a community where you can kind of share what you're doing and also get feedback from other people. I think you can go a lot further when you're surrounding yourself with like-minded people like that. So yeah, I'd say any idea that you have, it doesn't have to be completely unique. You can just put your own spin on it, and I think if you pursue that and are open about sharing, your progress, the successes and failures, that you're going to meet a lot of cool people and you're going to go a lot further than just kind of holding that all into yourself and trying to do that in a very isolated way. So yeah, that quote really resonated with me. Of again, you don't have to have a completely unique idea, but just focus on the execution, and a lot of good, I think, can come from that.
I love it. All right, man. Well, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for sharing all your ideas. I really enjoyed talking to you. And yeah, we're gonna be in touch in Twitter. Whenever you want to reach out, feel free to do so. And thank you again.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been a great conversation, and I'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Bye.
All right, see ya.